Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Yana Johnson, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Major Tariq El-Gayar. Today marks the 75th anniversary of the bombing of Darwin. This was the first time the Australian mainland has come under enemy attack, and it was the moment when the Second World War came to the Australian mainland. On the morning of the 19th of February, 1942, 188 aircraft were launched from 4 Japanese aircraft carriers in the Timor Sea, arriving in the skies over Darwin just before 10 a.m. At first, they pattern bombed the harbour and town, before bombing and machine gunning the harbour, the RAAF and civilian airfields, and the Army Hospital. The attack lasted roughly 30 minutes. Darwin's defences, which included 2 anti-aircraft batteries and 10 American fighter aircraft, were quickly overwhelmed. Despite the odds, however, the Australian Army's anti-aircraft gunners, who had never been in combat before, showed great bravery and continued to man their guns throughout the attack. Just before midday, another group of 54 Japanese bombers from Ambon spent 20 minutes bombing the RAAF's airfield. By the time the raids had ended, 8 ships were either sunk or sinking in the harbour, and another 2 were beached. Smoke billowed across the harbour from the burning vessels and oil. The 250 people killed in Darwin that day included members of all 3 Australian services, civilians, including Indigenous Australians, Dutch merchant seamen, and American servicemen. The largest single group among those killed were American sailors and airmen. 9 of their 10 fighter aircraft were either shot down or destroyed as they tried to take off, while some 90 sailors died when the destroyer USS Peary sank. Many years later, President Barack Obama commented that, in a sense, it was in Darwin that the Australian-American alliance was born, in Australia's Pearl Harbor. We warmly welcome those whose families were affected by the bombing of Darwin in 1942. We warmly welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by families and visitors to the memorial. Please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are young and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is earth by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty rich and rare. In history's page let every state advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
The Australian War Memorial was a vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they love, and here we guard their record, which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today marks the 75th anniversary of the first Japanese attacks on Darwin on the 19th of February 1942. The raid first numbered 100 Japanese attacks on the Australian mainland, which took place during the Second World War. This evening we remember Wing Commander Archibald Tyndall, Royal Australian Air Force, who was killed during this attack. Popularly known as Archibald Robert Tyndall was born in Eversley in Hampshire in England on the 18th of January 1916. He was the second child of Archibald, known as Archie, and Hilda Tyndall. 5 months earlier, his family left Armidale in New South Wales to travel to England so that his father could join the British Army. Archibald Tyndall Sr. was born into a family of pioneering pastoralists based around Grafton in northern New South Wales. He served as a second lieutenant in France with the 177th Brigade Royal Field Artillery, while his family, including his infant child Archibald Jr., lived in England. Archibald Tyndall Sr. was killed on the Somme on the 8th of September 1916 during the Battle of Guillemont. Two of his brothers were later awarded military crosses while serving with the British Army. Following the end of the Great War, the widow Hilda Tyndall returned to Australia with her two children. The family settled in Armidale, where Archie Tyndall attended the prestigious Armidale School. He became captain of Tyrrell House and a school monitor, and was reportedly a good rifle shot serving with the school cadets. Tyndall enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force in July 1934 as an 18-year-old air cadet. A year later, he was commissioned as a pilot officer and posted No. 3 Squadron. After a year of fighter squadrons, Tyndall began a series of postings to different headquarters and schools. And following the outbreak of the Second World War in April 1941, Tyndall, now a squadron leader, was posted number 24 Squadron in Townsville, northern Queensland. Number 24 Squadron was a general purpose squadron equipped with single-engine ACA Wirraway aircraft and twin-engine Lockheed Martin Hodsons. After a month with the squadron, Tyndall was posted to RAF headquarters in Townsville. In January 1942, Tyndall was promoted to Wing Commander and sent to Darwin, where he became an armament officer with the Royal Australian Air Force Northwestern Area Headquarters. With Japan's entry into the war, New Guinea and Northern Australia were now the front line. While visiting New Britain in early January, Tyndall twice flew into action, piloting a Wirraway in attempts to intercept enemy aircraft during the Japanese attacks on Rabaul. Tyndall later went into action 6 weeks after that against the Japanese in Darwin on the 19th of February. At around 10 a.m, 188 Japanese carrier-borne aircraft attacked Darwin Harbour, the township and nearby airfields. 2 hours later, 54 Japanese bombers attacked the RAF airfield. During this second raid, Tyndall was sitting atop a trench, firing a gas-operated machine gun when he was hit and killed by cannon shells. He was 26 years old. Tyndall is thought to be the first RAAF combat casualty sustained in Australian mainland. An Air Force base at Katherine, Northern Territory, was later named Tyndall in honour, and the RAF base Tyndall remains one of Australia's most important defence installations. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is on display today beside the pool of reflection. This is one of but many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Wing Commander Archibald Robert Tyndall, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in hope of a better world.
They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, and nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and good evening.